Hello everyone, you have probably heard the news that there is a new Heroes of Might and Magic game on the way called Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era. And if you haven't heard about it yet, well, I suggest finding better sources for news than this channel. It is being made by a studio called Unfrozen, previously responsible for Eratus Lord of the Dead, which is an okay game according to Steven from the channel Steven Nonsense, and it is again being published by Ubisoft. So I do hope that it's going to be a good game, but Ubisoft has a track record of sabotaging basically everything it touches. However, it must be pointed out that some of the people who used to be in charge of Heroes of Might and Magic are not at Ubisoft anymore. And this is really highlighted in the game's announcement, because it is called Heroes of Might and Magic, not Might and Magic Heroes, and it is not set in Ashan. Ashan does not exist here. There isn't any trace in the announcement, at least, of Ashan. And that makes me quite happy because I despise that creation. We've spent 20 years in Ashan. We've spent as many games in Ashan as we have in Enroth over the course of a much longer time period. This is, in essence, Heroes of Might and Magic 8. There's no live service component announced to it. There's no battle pass, hopefully. It is worth mentioning, though, that the developer is using the Heroes of Might and Magic 3 competitive scene as a major inspiration for how it's going to develop, or has developed already, Heroes of Might and Magic the Olden Age. And that can be a good thing in some ways, especially if you're into the multiplayer aspect of Heroes of Might and Magic. But if you're not, I wouldn't say that there's a plethora of examples in history where a game that also has a single-player component has greatly benefited from the developers listening to the competitive crowd. Actually, I don't think there's been many examples of multiplayer games that have really thrived when the competitive scene was in charge. Maybe StarCraft's the only exception, and that only to a point. But because of this, because it's going to have quite a big focus on multiplayer, maybe it's not really excluded if we're talking about the possibility of it having battle passes and all that jazz. I mean, we are talking about Ubisoft, a company that will not hesitate to put that stuff into any game it can. It put microtransactions instead of cheats in some of its games, most of its games, because it could get away with it. So yes, there would be the possibility of this having battle passes and loot boxes and who knows what else. I hope it won't, but be prepared in case it does. Also expect an anti-cheat component, because of course that's what you look for in Heroes of Might and Magic. And telemetry collection, because you want to make sure that they're developing the content that people is actually playing and that it's balanced for lean or something. I don't know. Again, they're leaning into the multiplayer aspect. In some cases it can be good. I mean, they're taking the idea of map templates from Heroes of Might and Magic 3's competitive scene. So if you don't know what templates are, they're methods by which you can generate a type of map that's always going to look a certain way. That's something that Song of Conquest also does. So it's not all bad. You'll even have the option to play with simultaneous turns or turn timers. Again, it's really building up the competitive multiplayer scene, which I hope ends well for them. Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era, could have also called it Golden Era, I guess, is returning to Enroth, the planet, not the continent itself, but and the continent next to it, Jadaim, the one from Might and Magic 8. The story apparently is a prequel to, I guess, Might and Magic 8 and some bits of Heroes of Might and Magic. It's not specified when the game takes place, so I don't know if Lord Slayer's walking about slaying things, or if that portal from another world that brought Lord Iron Fist opened, or if you can find the letters he kept writing to his former liege somewhere stuffed there near the gate. But what's important is that it's back to the old ways, or old-ish ways. Make no mistake, Ubisoft is not making this game because they have the warm feelies for this franchise, for the people who enjoyed Heroes of Might and Magic 3 and 4, 5 a bit as well, and 2 and 1. They're making this game now, and it looks the way it does now because Songs of Conquest apparently was a big enough success. I'm not making wild speculations here. This is the same formula they've used in the past. When Legend of Grimrock carved out a new niche for a game genre that wasn't really being played anymore, the tile-based first-person RPG, they made Might and Magic 10. That game only existed because The Legend of Grimrock sold so well that they thought they could make some money off of it. And Might and Magic 10 was okay. Not great, but it was okay. I would be fine with this being just okay. I would be over the moon if I could just nod my head and say, yeah, Heroes of Might and Magic 8 was okay. This probably will not be the sentiment of people who are still playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3 now. I've seen some of the comments. Actually, I've saw some of the comments from people who commented on the video I made a long time ago about Songs of Conquest, which all boiled down to, well, if Heroes 3 is around, why play this? I don't know. I'm not saying you have to play it. Keep that in mind. It probably won't be as good as Heroes 3 with its many mods. But if it gets close to it, I'm okay with that. It means that this franchise again may have a future if Ubisoft does not completely and utterly destroy the developer as it has done multiple times in the past. What we have been promised with this announcement is a return to form. The map is fully 2D now. Well, it's 3D in its aspect, but it's 2D in functionality, it's 2D in design, and it looks better than the last 2 games. Well, actually, maybe better than better than the last 4 games in the series. The problem of scaling, where everything was at the same time too big yet too small, too cramped but too sparse, seems to have been fixed by giving the environment, okay, maybe the mountains could still do with some tiny bit of work, but it looks fine. In the screenshots they have shown, everything that I see on the world map is identifiable. Just look at that dragon city. It's as if they took it straight out of Heroes 2 and 3. With a single glance, I think I know which parts of the map are interactable and which are just there for decor. And I must say that the effect of the paper map burning up as you explore, revealing more territory, is very nice and reminiscent of Civilization 5 and a bit of Elemental War of Magic, I'd say. And the towns are quite easily identifiable through the giant statue denoting their alignment, which is not at all subtle. Maybe they could have found a more not that approach to identifying the towns, but I'm okay with it. I can live with that. The towns also now have town screens again, and they're in the press photos. They're there on purpose. The combat map is based on hexes again, and it is being played just like Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and 3 were, and Songs of Conquest, of course. You actually have a working map editor from the sounds of it. It also has a mode called One Hero Blitz, where you can probably just play with a single hero and everybody will, and there won't be as much hero spam. There's an arena mode if you just want to do some combat. There's also a campaign that promises to be non-linear, which is, it's nice. I mean, Heroes of Might and Magic 2 in a way had a non-linear campaign as well, not in the sense that you could choose between Roland or Archibald, but within the campaign itself you'd have some branching off missions. They didn't really matter, but you had alternative picks of missions. I don't know how they're going to approach it here, but hey, it's good that it's there. As long as they don't have to listen to the word duchy being spoken by anyone, or hear the phrase Griffin Eternal repeated at me, I'll be okay with what's coming. I'm almost even okay with how things look in terms of the units. They still have the Warcraft influence. I know you're going to say, well, it's not Warcraft. They were influenced more by Warhammer. No. When Heroes of Might and Magic 5 came out, actually even years before that, nobody gave a crap in the video game space about fantasy Warhammer. The only reason it looked like that was because of Warcraft 3 and then because of World of Warcraft. Because that style sold. That is why it looked like that. And the style has perpetuated in a way in this version of the game as well. You can see some details like units having monstrously large equipment for no reason. Like there's a knight or a guardsman or whatever the unit's gonna be who has a crossguard on their sword which is bigger than their head. It's not all the units though. Some of them are a bit more subdued, some of them are a bit more normal. I've even seen halflings in there, which gives me hope that maybe we're gonna have a wizard faction or something akin to more traditional factions. Actually, they've announced some of them, most of them. We're gonna have the temple, which is going to be the knight faction, or the castle faction, if you will. We're going to have the necromancers. We're going to have the sylvan, which I hope will be geared more towards sorceress and less towards the rampart. But it is Shadame, so it's going to have its own stylings. It won't be Enroth and it won't be Erathia. It will be different. And I have to accept that. I have to live with that. I have to make peace with it. And you should too. The dungeon is going to be just a dungeon, but it's going to have the Dark Elves, because the Dark Elves, well, they were in Might and Magic 8. That's where they showed up for the first time, so it's okay. It's going to have dragons. It looks like it's going to have gargoyles and minotaurs and I think maybe Medusa or Hydras from that giant building with the snakes in there. And there will be a hive faction, which is described as being formed out of a collective of creatures that are native to Shadame, but who were in some way corrupted by a malevolent influence from the Inferno demonic lords. So maybe this takes place after or during Might and Magic 6, because that's what the Kriegans were, the Inferno. They showed up after the invasion. So maybe we will get a chance to hear about the battles that some people are now conducting in Enroth against the dreaded Kriegans, or maybe in Erathia. I don't know. Again, it's not specified exactly when it takes place, or if even it matters when it takes place. Maybe it's its own thing. Maybe it's a soft reboot or something. And I think the last faction is a sort of a frozen Tuluoid thing, of judging from the icon and from the screenshots I saw in some Russian-speaking channels on YouTube. I don't know the details. They'll announce it probably quite soon. I was kind of expecting a barbarian there, maybe a wizard. The game will also feature a host of new gameplay mechanics, or sometimes just remixed gameplay mechanics from older titles. For example, you're going to have alternate unit upgrades, but they're not mutually exclusive. This isn't going to be like the Heroes 4 situation where you could choose between genies and I think Nagas. No, you're going to have, for example, your skeleton building, and then you can upgrade it to let you make skeleton warriors or skeleton archers, or both. I mean, you can build both of them, and you can choose what path of upgrade you can have for any number of your units. You'll also be able to do things like reroll spells by spending some resources in case, you know, you didn't get the spell you wanted in your mage building, because that's how guilds roll. The units also have variable morale, in the sense that the maximum possible morale will be variable. I mean, the undead are going to have 0 again, but some other units may have like 1 morale or some 2 morale. It depends on the unit. That's to give them a bit more of a, I guess, usefulness, because some lower level units will probably benefit greatly from having expanded morale, like the halflings, for example, I'd say. Or the peasants. Like, imagine if the peasants had maximum morale, like the highest morale possible, and it would just go off constantly. They'd still be useless unless they buffed them immensely in this game. I don't even know if they're in this game, honestly, but hey, who knows. I think they also said that random chance, although it will play a part again, it'll be less of a factor now. And they've said that the way that re-rolling spells is an example of that, and I think also that the way the Grail works is an example as well. The Grail, it's coming back as a Grail like in Heroes of Might and Magic 3, so it's not an ultimate artifact again. It'll be easier to find. You'll build it more often, but it's not going to be as powerful. It's balanced for multiplayer, I'm afraid. Another change, or a remix of some older ideas, if you will, is the notion that they want you to feel like you're playing as the faction you chose even after you conquer towns from different factions. And they're doing it in two ways. One is the faction ability, which I think was in Heroes 6 or 7, I don't exactly remember. They didn't specify exactly how this will be implemented, but they did mention that one of the factions will have like war machines. That's one of its faction abilities. So I'm guessing ballistas, the ammo cart, possibly stuff like that is going to be specific to, I think, the Knight faction. Apart from that, you also have a perk tree for your faction. So you're going to be able to further specialize exactly how that faction behaves over time. That's a great idea. I mean, letting the player further customize how they want to play is really nice and not something I would associate with a multiplayer focused game, because in a multiplayer focused game you're playing the meta and that's it, though that probably is how people will end up playing anyway. There are a bunch of other changes that I won't get into, stuff like set items and all sorts of other things. What's important is that you're going to be able to check them out for yourself when the game comes out in early access, because it's going to be in early access. They again want to really balance this out, so it's probably going to stay there for a while. Again, Songs of Conquest did it well, so they're doing it as well. We have a new Heroes of Might and Magic game to look forward to. It's leaning a bit too much into the multiplayer aspect for my taste, but hey, that's just me. There's people that have been playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3 competitively and keeping it alive for the last 25 years. So the fact that this game is being made in the first place is a lot of their fault. It's to their credit, I guess. And Song of Conquest as well. The important thing is, at least for me, is that I'm okay with it. I haven't seen anything in it that's insulting, offensive, or stupid. Some will say it looks like a mobile game. That's okay. It doesn't have to look like Heroes 6 did on launch, because again, Heroes 6 on launch looked absolutely amazing. I think it's the right call. It's the right Heroes of Might and Magic game that we needed at this time. Actually, it's the right Might and Magic game that we needed about 12 years ago instead of Heroes 6. And I'm again super grateful that it's not set in Ashan. We can all just forget that episode ever happened and be happy. At least until the game's released and it proves to be a buggy mess. But hey, that's what the early access is for. Hopefully. Unless Ubisoft screws everybody again. So what's your take on this? Like, what's your expectation of this game? Leave a comment below. I'm gonna try and have some proper shows out sometime by the end of the year. I'm working on a video about Vampire the Masquerade Redemption. It's been 2 years since I started working on it, so it'll be done by 2026. Goodbye, everybody. Take care. Go play some Heroes 2 as well.